Again, my name is Gwen Sorley. My background is in education. I have a master's in education, and I started using play attention with my clients back in 1996. So I have been using play attention for 28 years now, with every age from 5 all the way up through adulthood. I believe my oldest client was 85. And so I really do hope that my experiences using play attention and helping individuals improve executive function, all of that experience will really give you a better understanding of our program and our process. So now looking through the webinar list, I see that there are a lot of individuals here today who have attended some of our past webinars. And if you have attended some of our past webinars, or if you've watched some of the recordings on YouTube, you'll notice that we often have webinars that chat about different areas of executive function. We have webinars on organization and time management, rejection sensitive dysphoria, emotion regulation. That's a very popular one. We have a lot of different webinars in areas of executive function. And we always provide tips and strategies in those webinars. And it's really important for you to have tips and strategies. We want you to have those in your toolbox. But at some point, it's important that we get to the root cause. We get to the root issue and help develop skills so that all of those tips and strategies make sense so that you can apply them effectively. And, it comes to mind when I was talking to a woman in a consultation just a couple of weeks ago. And she said, everyone keeps telling me just write a to do list. And she said, I know how to write a to do list. I am an intelligent person. I know how to write a to do list. In fact, I start every day with a to do list. However, the problem is, I don't get through that to do list. I never check anything off. Can any of you relate to that? Raise your hand, or you can type Y in the chat box if you want to type in the chat box. Can you relate to that? Where someone will tell you, just do this, just do that, and gives you all types of suggestions on what you should be doing. And you think, well, I know that, but why does it seem that I can't follow through? And if you think about even just a to do list, if you think about the to do list, in order for that to do list to be successful, it's more than just knowing how to write down your list in the beginning of the day, right? In order for that to benefit you, we have to make certain that you're able to have sustained attention so that when you start the first thing on your list, you're able to sustain your attention on that first thing until you complete it. So, task completion. Even before getting to that first thing on the list, we have to make certain we improve memory so that you remember you have a to do list. We also have to work on impulse control so that you don't start number one and impulsively jump down to number three. Or what about your ability to filter distractions? Do we need to help develop that so that you don't just start number one and then you're distracted by, oh, your dog or the laundry or a million other things that you think should take priority? So there are a lot of different areas we need to help you improve: sustained attention, filtering distractions, impulse control, memory. All of those cognitive skills need to be improved in order for that to-do list, that strategy, to be successful. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How can we get to the root cause and help develop cognitive skills that right now may be weak, but are required for strong executive function? And you may even see this with your child. If your child has a 504 in place at school, then there are a lot of accommodations that they've made, right? and those are good. Again, we want those accommodations to be in place. However, and I talk from experience because as I mentioned, my background is in education, so I did work in school settings. And when I was in a school setting, one of the common accommodations that was made was longer test time. And that's good in theory, right? But unless we're simultaneously teaching that student how to sustain his attention to the test, how to filter distractions, how to control his impulsive nature so that he's not just rushing through just to get it done, all of those skills need to be improved. Processing so that he can process what's in his head and get it down on paper. We need to make certain that we're giving him the skills that he needs in order for longer test time to make sense, to be beneficial. Because if we don't simultaneously teach skills, then longer test time just ends up being longer time to daydream. And I'm certain that some of you here today have experienced that. And you can type in the chat box or share by raising your hand if you've experienced some accommodations that you thought in theory were really going to help, but they just don't seem like they're enough. And if you really think about it, it's probably because we're not simultaneously teaching skills. So we specialize in one thing. We specialize in helping you reach your goals. So, if you would, in the chat box, go ahead and type your goals because it's important for all of us to share today and know that we're not alone. So, perhaps you're here because you have a really bright child who is just struggling in the classroom. And you can type that in the chat box. Let me make sure that I have allowed. Okay. Or you may be here for yourself because you feel that your promotions seem to be eluding you in the workplace. Or you feel like, as we mentioned in the beginning of this webinar, that you just feel like you're working really hard. And every day you feel very exhausted. You've been busy all day, but maybe you don't look like you've really completed too much. Maybe you have a child right now who is about to transition from high school into university, and you're realizing that your child doesn't actually have those skills and the self regulation they need in order to be successful when they're independent in a university level. Alicia says she's interested in helping herself and others. Stephanie wants to complete an MBA for herself. Good. Tassa, sorry, wants to help her child daydream less at school. Excellent. Nora says that she's looking at it for herself and also her grandchildren. Excellent. Betsy says that she's interested in helping her students in the classroom. Anita wants to be able to help teachers at my school and myself increase their toolbox when dealing with students who have ADHD or executive functioning issues. Dave says help son to achieve potential by learning skills to improve executive function capabilities. Excellent. So you see, and you probably heard a lot of people share exactly why they're here, and this is why you're here. Or maybe you're here for a little bit of a different reason. Jen wants to be able to get motivated to do things. Very good. So, and you notice that some individuals here are looking at this for themselves or their students or their children. So remember that, as I mentioned early on, play attention is appropriate from any age from 5 all the way up through adulthood. We can customize a neurocognitive training program to help develop those skills that you need in order to have strong executive function. And we've been doing this for about 30 years. We were actually the pioneers in neurocognitive training. It was our founder, Peter Freer, who was researching back in the 1980s. He was researching different attention training techniques because he had come across so many of his clients who were struggling in the areas of attention and executive function. And he came across the work that Dr. Pope and Dr. Paulson were doing in NASA. And what they were doing was they were integrating feedback technology with their simulator training. And that means that while their pilots and astronauts were in their simulator training, they were monitoring the brain states of those pilots and astronauts and giving them real time feedback regarding their attentive state while doing their job. So, if they were very attentive, if they were in the zone, then all of their controls ran very easily. They were automatic almost. But if they started to get stressed or anxious, if they were distracted, they weren't as attentive, they weren't in that peak zone, then all of their controls became very sluggish. It got harder for them to do their job if they were not in their peak attentive state. And so our founder thought, well, that's brilliant. If I can allow my clients to see their attentive state while doing the skills that they need in order to be successful, then I have a comprehensive program. So that is the foundation of play attention. And what makes us unique and effective is what we teach and how we teach it. Play Attention is the only program available that integrates feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping. So, this is our body wave armband. And on the back, there are 3 sensors. And those sensors, when I slide this body wave armband on my arm, now those sensors are monitoring my brain activity that tells us how attentive I am. And then that information is given over to the computer where I'm allowed to control all of the cognitive exercises just with my mind, or more specifically, my attention alone. And I receive constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not I truly am focused and paying attention. And that's such an important part in the learning process that we really tend to miss. And that is that in order to learn, most of us learn best. Well, maybe I should ask you this. Let me put up a poll, actually. I'm going to put up a poll on screen so we can take a quick poll here. You should see it on your screen. How do you or your children or your students learn best? Is it through lecture or is it hands-on experiential? Good. And I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right. So 93% of you said that you learn best from experiential learning. Some people said lecture, but 93% of you here today said hands-on or experiential. So you know, if you have an experience, you learn from it. But unfortunately, with attention, we tend to try to teach it through lecture, right? We say, sit still, eyes on me, pay attention. We try to tell you what to do. And if you look at your child and you say, sit still, pay attention, I need you to pay attention, what do they typically say back to you? Typically, I would hear, I am paying attention. And they really thought that they were, but they hadn't actually developed what it takes for them personally. And I can tell them all day long to sit still and put their eyes on me and pay attention. But until I allow them to experience what it means to be attentive, that's when they learn. So that's what play attention does. Play attention can provide you an experience where we take that abstract concept and make it concrete and controllable. Now you actually see your attention in real time. You feel what you're doing and you're allowed to practice it. Now, Faye says, how can the armband monitor attention? So when you think about what attention is, right now, you have billions of neurons firing in your brain at different times. But when all of those neurons fire in synchrony, when they all fire at one time, you give off a very specific electromagnetic signal. And that signal is what this body wave armband is listening for. It's listening for that moment when you give off that very specific electromagnetic signal. Now, you may be used to, Faye, and this may be why you're asking, you may be used to seeing something on the head, right? When we say that we monitor brain activity, usually you see sticky pads or ear clips, something on the head. And the reason they usually have something on the head is because that signal you give off naturally, it's so small, it's so minute that it's easiest to monitor if you're close to the source, which of course is the head. The difficulty with that for us, especially, is that we work with a lot of clients that have a lot of sensory issues. And in general, no one likes to have something on the head. It is uncomfortable, it's invasive. So we have to work very hard in order to make certain that we can improve the client experience. So, what we have done is we've improved the technology to where we can monitor, but we can do it much further from the source. So just because you move further from the source, that signal doesn't disappear, it just gets a little harder to tune into. So we have to amplify that signal, then we have to filter out heart rate, blood flow, muscle, all that noise that occurs so that we can now monitor that same brain signal, but do it much easier and much more comfortably. Okay. Let me know, Faye, if you have more questions on that. So, again, we're taking this abstract concept and allowing you to activate all of the cognitive exercises by your mind alone, or more specifically, your attentive state. And the reason we do this is because we know when we talk about improving executive function, and that is our end goal, then we're sparking brain change. And brain change doesn't just occur. There are very specific catalysts that need to be in place in order to spark that brain change. And we've incorporated all of those catalysts into the program. So the very first catalyst necessary for brain change is attention, of course. And I'm certain that you can all relate to this. You can have a great teacher, or for our attendee here, Stephanie, who says that she is going to be completing her MBA, she can have a great professor. You can have a great counselor. And someone here said that they've been trying counseling. Sean said that counseling hasn't really helped. So you can have a great teacher, great counselor, but if you're having a hard time paying attention to that individual or that process, it's very difficult for you to get maximum benefit. So that's why we make certain that no matter what you're working on, you have to be paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then the activity stops or the character goes in the wrong direction, and you have to focus back in order to continue. So that way we make certain that every time you do an exercise, whether it's working memory or social skills or auditory processing, you are actively engaged. Once we have your engagement, then we can learn. Then we also have to incorporate the second catalyst necessary for brain change, which is challenge. Because if you come into a learning situation and you are 100% successful, you're not going to really learn anything, right? You're not going to spark new neural pathways to become formed because you already know it. It's prior knowledge. You're 100% successful. So we have to make certain that you're challenged. So what we have is an auto adjust algorithm. So when you put this body wave armband on, we're looking at your best ability to pay attention, and the bar is set there. Now, if you're able to reach or exceed that level, then you're able to activate the activity. If you're able to maintain that level for a given number of seconds, then in the background, we're going to raise the bar just a little bit. Now you have to be that much more attentive in order to be successful. And the opposite is true too, because I know many of you here are thinking, but what if she's frustrated? My daughter's already frustrated at school. I don't want her to be frustrated here. And so we account for that because we know if she's frustrated or you're frustrated, you're not going to learn either. So if you start getting fatigued, or your child or your student starts getting fatigued, you can't reach that same level of attention, then we bring you back down to your last level of success, and then we gradually build you up again. So we keep you. You don't have to do anything manually. We all streamline this for you so that we always keep you at a challenging yet success-based pace. And then, of course, the third catalyst necessary for brain change is deliberate practice. We don't want you coming in and just going through the motions. We have to have a deliberate practice model, which allows you to strive for higher levels of achievement. And sometimes you're not really sure what goals to set. So we have our AI, our artificial intelligence called Sheer Genius built in, and our AI guides you to success. And what we do for the deliberate practice model is that we have data that is stored after every single exercise. And Sheer Genius will look at that data and set a deliberate practice for the next time. So when you log in, Sean, Sheer Genius is going to say, Sean, yesterday you completed time on task with 70% attention. Today, let's try 72%. And if you do that, you earn a point, and the point goes into your reward system. And so that always helps you strive for higher levels of achievement. So attention, challenge, deliberate practice, three catalysts required for brain change that are all embedded within the Play Attention program. Now, we've been doing this integration. Remember, I said earlier, what makes us unique and effective is what we teach and how we teach it. The how is really critical because Play Attention is the only program that integrates that real time feedback with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping. And so Tufts University wanted to know, is that integration important? Or can we simply give you a series of cognitive exercises, or what you hear a lot about as brain games, and get the same results? So they went into the Boston Public School District. They had three different groups of students, all identified as ADHD. The first group received Play Attention, so they had full integration. The second received just cognitive exercises, so brain games on the computer, no feedback technology, no behavior shaping. I'm sure many of you here today have tried brain games in the past. So it was Play Attention, brain games, and then the third group was the control. So they received no intervention at all. And at the end of the study, the Play Attention students were the only students that showed global improvements in all areas, including academic, social, behavioral, and executive function. They were also the only students that if they started the study and they were on medication, because some of the students were on and some of them were not on. If they were on medication and they were in the Play Attention group, those students had an average decrease in their medication, where the other two groups had an average increase. And that goes back to skill building. If we can help you develop the skills that you lack, there may be less of a necessity to mask symptoms. And I think that's really important because Sean brought up that he's been taking medication and it's helped a bit, but he still struggles with motivation, activation, follow through, and other things. And so he kind of sums that up, right? Medication helps some people by controlling symptoms. The difficulty is that medication doesn't teach any skills and it doesn't change behaviors. And that's exactly what Sean's experiencing here. And maybe some of you have seen that in yourself or your children or your students. So Play Attention can actually teach the skills that medication alone cannot teach. So those are great studies. They also did a 6-month follow-up to make certain that once the students graduated the program, the skills maintained, which they did. If you want to review those studies, just type in Tufts in the chat box, and I'll make certain that we follow up and include those studies for you. So just type Tufts if you do want to review that information a bit further. All right. So as I mentioned, you are going to control all of the cognitive exercises with your mind alone, with your attentive state. So I don't usually do this during a webinar, but I am going to go ahead and do a live demo right now. I do this in our consultations, but I haven't done it in a webinar because I don't want to uh, interrupt the flow here. But hopefully everything will go seamlessly and Zoom will cooperate so I can show you a live demo because I really want you to experience what I mean when I say real-time feedback and how powerful that can be. So now remember, I have this body wave armband on my arm, okay? And before I switch over and I do all this hard work and show you how it works, let me ask you another question. I want to take a real quick poll to make certain that we are, again, on the same page. And let me go back here and I'm going to launch a new poll. And you should be able to see it right now. What does that body wave armband monitor? Before I do the live demo, I want to make certain everyone's on the same page. So I have this body wave armband on my arm. You should see the poll now. What is this body wave armband monitoring? Is it A, eye movement, B, breathing, C, brain activity, or D, FM radio? If you can't see the poll, it looks like most of you can see the poll on the screen right now. But if you can't, you can type your answer in. What is this body wave armband monitoring? All right, and I'm going to close the, good, Jen, you got it. I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Great. Okay, so 95% of you responded correctly. So this body wave armband is monitoring my brain activity, indicative of how attentive I am. That information is communicated to the computer via Bluetooth. So I am going to actually control the first exercise here by my attentive state alone. So I'm going to switch my sharing here so that you can actually see this in action. Okay, so I can't see my chat box anymore, so I am hoping that you can all now see that I have the play attention up on my screen. And I am going to demonstrate for you the very first exercise here called attention stamina. Now, remember, again, I'm going to monitor my brain activity with my body wave armband. And when I click play, now my goal here is to learn how to direct and sustain my attention at will, much like being able to pay attention to the teacher in the classroom or my boss in the workplace. So I can choose from different characters, but one is this diver. I'm going to select the diver. And when I click play, the very first thing you're going to see is you're going to see a transition screen. So what that transition screen is helping me with, it says your game is loading. And this is helping me transition from my conversation with you into the actual exercise. So we have that transition time to get me ready. And then once I get into the exercise, you can see that I have my character at the top of the screen. Now, I'm not paying attention because I'm still talking to you. So he's at the top of the screen. My attention meter at the left is a full white. Now I'm going to stop my conversation and I'm going to pay attention to my task, focus in. That's as low as he goes right there. Now notice as soon as I start talking to you, he starts to float up because I'm no longer as attentive. And distraction can be a variety of things. It can be me talking. I'm going to turn my volume down here a little bit so you can hear me. It can be that I'm talking to you. It could be anxiety. It could be someone walks into the room and I can't filter that noise. Immediately he starts to float up. And now I know I'm not in that attentive state. So now I'm going to control that behavior, that daydreaming, focus in. Okay. So, really empowering. And that is huge, that empowering part of the program. Because right now, if you think about your child or your students, and a lot of them think that this is all outside of their control. And suddenly you're actually showing them that they can control this. They're actually going to see their attention in real time and actually be able to practice it. So, right down here, you're going to notice that there are a lot of data that you see on the screen. And you'll see that I have played that exercise for 1 minute and 30 seconds. Of that time, I was actually paying attention. I was in the zone 33% of the time. And my recovery speed, which is from the time I lost my attention to the time I regained it, I was right around 12 seconds. So you see, all of this data that we talked about is going to be stored for me. And so then Sheer Genius is going to take this data and say, yesterday, you completed this with 33% attention. Today, let's try 35%. And if you do that, you earn a point. So there's that deliberate practice model. Now, a couple of things that you also noticed. One is our graphics. That's about as exciting as our graphics get. All of our graphics are very simple, they're very low stimuli. And the reason we do this is because we know if we give you something very high stimuli, if we give your child a video game, or if you're watching YouTube or TikTok, you can almost hyper focus in those situations, right? Where it's hard to draw you away from it. So we don't need to teach you how to pay attention to high stimuli or high interest. You've got that. What we need to teach is what's more difficult, and that's how to pay attention to low stimuli, much like the classroom teacher, the workplace, where we cannot possibly compete. So that's why all of our graphics are very simple, so that you can learn how to pay attention to that low stimuli at will. Okay, that's really important to keep in mind. Also, notice how immediate that feedback was regarding my attentive state. Now, by providing me with that constant and immediate feedback regarding my attention, I can start developing that self regulation and self monitoring I need in order to recognize when I'm paying attention, recognize when I'm not paying attention, and more importantly, when I'm not paying attention, I'll know how to correct it on my own, not because someone's standing over me saying, get back on task, sit still, eyes on me. I'll know how to correct it because I've actually had that opportunity to practice it. And that's where that experience is so critical, that real time feedback. Now, you'll also notice in the middle of the screen, I have a bronze, silver, and gold medal. And there are certain benchmarks I'm going to have to reach before moving up to silver and gold. And again, our AI will track your data and graduate you when appropriate. And when we graduate you, we're going to tie in other skill areas such as processing speed. So if you're a slow processor, we're going to work on processing speed, impulse control, distractors, and transitions, that mental flexibility. So you see, we build in all of those other skills that are required for strong executive function. Now I'm going to go back to our uh, presentation here, and hopefully it will go seamlessly. And hopefully you were able to see everything that I demonstrated. I don't see anyone that says they couldn't see it. So hopefully that went well for you. And so now you noticed when we first went into the cognitive exercises, there were lots of different exercises. I demonstrated one, attention stamina, my ability to direct and sustain attention. You're going to notice that there are many different exercises. You will not need all of them. That's where the customization comes in, where we take the time to get to learn and get to know your specific needs so that we can customize a plan and pinpoint all of those cognitive skills that are required, that you may be struggling with, that you may find challenging, but are required for strong executive function. Now, I know I've brought that term up a lot so far, And I'm certain that many of you are very familiar with that term. But if you're not, you can think of executive function as kind of like the CEO of your brain. It's what allows you to control your attention, your behaviors, your emotions. It allows you to plan and prioritize, organize, avoid procrastination, and remain on task. All of those mental processes that we typically use every day. They tend to be weakest for people with attention difficulties or ADHD. And what's interesting is that no one's born with strong executive function, but we all have the potential to develop it. And that development starts right after birth. And if it goes naturally along, it continues through our mid to late 20s. Unfortunately, for a lot of our students who are struggling in these areas, we expect everyone to have strong executive function by the time they hit middle school. So by the time they're 12 or 13, we expect everyone to be more independent and organized and have strong ability to prioritize. And you may have seen this in yourself, or you may see it in your child where your child's really bright. And so in the early school years did pretty well. But then around that middle school time, it seemed to get really difficult. And that's not because they don't know how to do the different tasks at hand. It's just all of these mental processes. They just simply struggle with executive function. So it's really important, no matter where you are now, whether you're a teenager or an adult, it's important that we take the time to step back and start developing these skills so that we can have strong executive function. And the good thing we know about neuroplasticity is that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable. And if we provide you with the right tools and the right challenge, we can develop these skills despite your current wiring. We know that age is not a factor. We know that labels like ADHD are not a factor. If we provide you the right tools and challenge, you can develop these new neural pathways. So your course module will include the core modules. These are considered to be the foundations of executive function. So every single exercise is going to relate back into the classroom or back into the workplace so that we can transfer and generalize these skills. We're going to work on attention stamina. That's your ability to direct and sustain your attention at will. Visual tracking. That's the ability to stay focused and visually track. So if the teacher's ever said to you, he does great when I stand right next to him, but as soon as I walk away, he's out the window or at the door, and then he has that diffused attention. So we work on staying focused and visually tracking. Task completion. This for your child, that's like 15 minutes of homework that takes 2 or 3 hours. As an adult, it's that feeling at the end of the day that you've been really busy, but you haven't finished anything. You start a million things, you finish nothing. So being able to stay on that one task until you complete it. Short-term memory is the ability to remember dates, names, facts, filtering distractions, because remember, it's not attention deficit, right? There's no one with a complete deficit of attention. The problem is you have great attention. You're just paying attention to bits and pieces of everything. So you may be on a bit of sensory overload because you're taking everything in. And so we're going to teach you how to stay focused to what's important and filter out all of that unnecessary stimuli. And then transfer and generalization. That's our academic bridge, where we're going to ask you to actually do real work activities while connected to that body wave armband. And remember, as you move into the intermediate and advanced skill options, we tie in all of these other skills. So you may have a main skill, but then we're also going to work on these 4 other skills when you move up. This is our academic bridge. And this is where you're going to do your homework, your office work, while connected to the body wave armband. So you see that my student here, she has the body wave armband on, but she's not looking at a computer screen. She's writing her report. And as long as she's paying attention to her report, she's going to hear from the computer, good, great. If she starts to drift, Then she'll hear focus. And then she knows she's not in that state she needs to be in order to process and complete that assignment. So, this again is where we ask you to take all of the skills you've learned within play attention and apply them. Okay. Now, the remaining modules that we have available, because remember, you saw that large main menu screen, these are options that we can pick and choose from as we are customizing your plan. Those include working memory. So that's the ability to hold information on your mental sticky note in order to complete a task. So it helps with reasoning, evaluating, comprehension. Auditory processing is the ability to follow through with multiple step verbal instructions. So if you say, go to your room, put away your sneakers, bring down your jacket, they'll be able to do that without being redirected or reminded. Hand-eye coordination is all about small motor control. So if they have any difficulties with handwriting, that's a great one. Social skills, if you have any difficulty picking up on social cues, you miss the look, you miss the shake of the head, and then you have a difficult time keeping friends or peer relationships, that's social skills. Spatial memory is remembering where things are located. So if you're constantly losing your keys or your cell phone, that's a great one. We do have mental math available if you want to work on first grade or second grade addition and subtraction math facts. Motor skills is if you have more bumps, bruises, accidents than your peers. It helps with that mind body coordination. And then mindfulness. We hear so much about how mindfulness helps with the symptoms of ADHD and anxiety. And that's true. However, we can't look at someone with ADHD and say, now I want you to practice mindfulness because mindfulness is hard. It's hard for all of us, but especially if you have that running mind. So, what we do is we give you a visual representation of what it means to be in the present moment. So, we really enhance that practice. And that's really important because, you know, many times my clients will say to me, well, I tried mindfulness and I tried it for 10 minutes and it just doesn't work for me. At the end of 10 minutes, I had written my grocery list. I didn't really actually be mindful. So that's critical to remember because the hallmark of mindfulness is distractions are going to happen. Just accept that, allow them to come in, and then let them go. And that's easier said than done, isn't it? So, because it can be so difficult to let those distractions go. And so, in our mindfulness application, you're actually going to get that visual representation. So, you learn how to control that. So you'll see a lotus flower in the middle of the screen. Once you have your mind in the present moment, you're able to start opening the petal on the flower. If you start thinking, when's my next meeting? Who do I have to call? What do I have to pick up after work? That petal's going to start to close. And then you have to bring yourself back in order to continue. So we really recommend this for all of those individuals who have difficulty with anxiety or a lot of that internal dialogue, that rejection sensitive dysphoria where you have that internal dialogue going on. This will really help you learn how to stay in the present moment. So you can see all of the cognitive skills that we address. These are the foundations of executive function because if you think about all of those mental processes we talked about earlier, in order to be more organized, in order to regulate your emotions, these skills are critical because if you think about just emotion regulation in and of itself, in order for you to improve emotion regulation, well, you have to first be able to pay attention to the entire situation. You have to process that information. You have to control your impulsive nature to just impulsively respond with the first emotion. You have to stay in the present moment. You have to remember the strategies you've been given. And so, memory, attention, impulse control, processing, mindfulness, all of those skills you're practicing every single time you do a session. So, every time you do a play attention session, you're strengthening executive function. And that is critical to success in the workplace, success at home, with relationships, and at school. Now, if you're wondering what cognitive areas you would like to address in your program, some of you probably have just kind of checked the boxes as I went through that list. But if you're unsure what would be best for you, we do have an ADHD test online, and it just has a series of questions. And that allows us to look at all of the challenges that you may be experiencing, or your child or your clients. And then we'll summarize which of those cognitive exercises would we recommend for your program. Some of you here may have already taken that. If you haven't and you'd like to do that assessment, that will give us a good starting point to actually start customizing your plans. And I'll put that up on screen. I think I have it here as well. You can go there, but I don't want you to leave the webinar. So if you want to just type in test, I'll make certain that you get that link directly in a follow up. And then we can really kind of look into your specific needs and what cognitive areas would be best for your specific program. And then Sandra asked how young can the child be? And we do recommend that they're at least 5 years old, because developmentally you have to be at that point where you can make the connections between what you're personally doing and what's appearing on screen. That's usually developed around the age of 5. So now your play attention program will include everything you need to run your system. So whether you're a home client or a professional client, you're going to receive the whole package that you need to have a successful program in place. And that is, of course, what is critical is your body wave armband. You'll have your customized neurocognitive training program. That's where we pinpoint the different cognitive skills that are most important for you. Behavior shaping module. This we will turn on, because you can turn it on or off depending on your needs. This will turn on if you have any self-distracting behaviors like fidgeting, nail biting, chewing on your shirt, whatever it may be, skin picking. Those behaviors are self-distracting. And a lot of times you may be unaware that you're even doing those behaviors. And more importantly, you don't know how they affect you. But in using play attention and getting that real-time feedback, you're going to get a one-to-one correlation on how certain behaviors affect your attention. And then we're going to use that to help you start to learn to control it. You're going to have a personal executive function coach assigned to you. So that's one of our coaches here on staff to assist you every step of the way. So when you first start your program, we're going to set up your profile with the coach. Then your coach is going to take you through a practice session. That's your live training session that's listed next. And make certain you're real comfortable with everything before you start working on your sessions. And then you'll be ready to begin. And you will have support as long as you're using Play Attention. That executive function coach is there to help you. Now, just a few tips on making these skills lifelong, because we do want to work to a point of permanency. We want to know that not only do you have these skills now, but you'll have them 20 years from now. So it is important that you're very consistent in your training. And by consistency, I mean working at least an hour per week. And you can break that up. Some people do 2 30-minute sessions. Most people do 4 15-minute sessions, whatever works best for you. If you're a professional here and you're going to be offering play attention to your clients, usually 2 30-minute sessions. If you're doing it at home, 4 15-minute sessions. You'll see good results after about 6 weeks of consistent training. You're going to notice that you are more engaged, you are more productive, your memory is better. You're getting calls from school and the teachers are saying, I don't know what you've been doing, but I've been giving multiple step instructions and he's been following through with all the instructions. He's getting all of his work done during class time. So you're going to start seeing these small steps of improvement. But what you're not seeing is what's actually occurring in the brain, and that's that you're causing those new neural pathways to become formed. And in the beginning, they're weak. But through the practice and repetition, we're going to strengthen those networks to a point of permanency. And permanency typically takes about 40 hours total. So if you're working that hour per week, I would plan on about 10 months of consistent training. And at that point, you and your executive function coach will review the data. Make certain you're at all the advanced skill options, make certain everything's transferred and generalized. If everything looks good, we'll start graduating from the program. If it looks like there's more work to be done, we simply customize the plan and we keep going. So whether it takes you 10 months or 16 months, it doesn't matter. We continue working with you as long as necessary. And even once you graduate, if you want to continue using the program for peak performance training, you can do that. Your support is always there, and you have the use of the program because you own the program. So remember, Sheer Genius, our AI, is going to set your curriculum for the day, set those mini goals, the deliberate practice. All of that is automated, and your data will all be tracked and graphed for you. And this is a great time too when you complete a number of exercises. You may want your executive function coach to do a quick Zoom meeting and just analyze your results with you. That's what your executive function coach is there for. So remember, in order to get your outcomes, the ones that you mentioned early on, you want to finish your MBA, you want to be more productive, you want to avoid procrastination, you want to be more motivated, you want to be able to control your emotions or help your child be successful at school. All of those outcomes are at your reach, and we can help you develop that cognitive training plan and will guide you every step of the way. And remember, in order to be successful, you just want to set up that consistency, maybe about 15 minutes a day. Now, we do have a couple of options. We have the home system that we've been chatting about here a little bit, but we also have the professional system that we touched on. The only difference between the home and the professional system is the user license. So the home system comes with a user license for 2 people. That means at any one time, you can have 2 family members enrolled in the program. And as you imagine, it's rare that we only work with 1 family member. Usually we work with at least 1 parent and 1 child, if not the entire family. So you can always upgrade your user license, or you can wait for people to graduate. The user licenses are reusable. The professional version, since you have multiple clients you want to enroll at one time, you have an unlimited user license, and there are no continuing fees. So it's a one-time fee to receive everything you need to run your program, as well as your unlimited support. Thanks so much, everyone. And please do sign up for our next webinar on ADHD self-advocacy. That is our next webinar in a couple of weeks, and you can get that information on our website. Thanks so much. Have a good day.